Hey everyone, it's Timmy Gobbles, and today I'm going to be adding the lobster enemy to my roguelite thing. And so in order to do that, I need an enemy class. I used to have a monster class that was based on the character class, and I totally forgot how that worked, so I just went ahead and made a new enemy scene. And so I'm going to need a sprite, a collision, probably some particles, and some other stuff. We'll throw some other stuff in there. And so Kenny has this nice like effects pack, and so I kind of slapped on the scratches, and I'm going to make like an attack for the lobster. Alright, want the scratches to be red, so they're threatening, and other stuff. Oh, you know, I need a hitbox, so let's add an area and a collision to it. Rectangle is probably fine. I could probably use a capsule, but, you know, I guess I am going to use a capsule. Shows what I remember. And so I need to be able to manage the rotation of it so that it matches the visual effect. Okay, so now I need to make the animation that makes everything move in tandem. So I'm going to want to emit those scratches twice. I want to do like a left-right hook kind of thing. So it's going to scratch with its left claw and then scratch with its right claw. And I'm going to throw all this stuff out anyways, so it's just kind of practice. But so the animation player, you have a like timeline, and anywhere on that timeline you can add keyframes for all kinds of stuff. Like any of the attributes on your different components, or you can even call methods with it. You just have to click that add track button and then click, it's like method or property or something, I don't know. Anyways, so one of the important things though is you want your animations to, when they're done, you want it to go back to like a resting state. Otherwise, sometimes when you use an animation and you change something, then you're left over with artifacts from that animation that you don't necessarily want. Like, suppose you turn your character to the left, and then that animation gets interrupted by something, like they get hit or something, but they're stuck in that position, and you didn't reset them with like the next beginning of an animation or something like that. So anyways, here is the lobster strike. There's a little whack, whack. And I don't have any sound effects yet, but, you know, those will come. One of the things we're going to need for enemies is health, so that we can defeat them. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a health class. And I'll just extend node so we can drop it onto the enemy scene. And we'll need things like taking damage, and maybe when the health runs out, we'll want to emit a signal. Probably want to start with some kind of health. So then, you know, each enemy is going to have like a list of animations, and they might not be the same animations. So like maybe some of the animations will carry over. Like maybe like a zombie scratching someone is going to look very similar to a skeleton scratching someone. But like the spider attack and the wizard attack, those are going to be different. So by just having an array of that. Oh, you know what? I kind of didn't like how the health component was working, so I wanted to incorporate the set get functions. Specifically, I want to be able to omit when the health is changed, because that's going to make health bars a lot easier to do. Because every time the health changes, then I can emit that signal and tell the health bar that it needs to like tween to the new value. Also, I can check if like the health is 0 and from that same signal. So that's why I need to emit the old health and the new health. So that way I can do a tween to make the health bar changes not so janky. And it's nice to put some little tidying lines in there. And just kind of the same old stuff, like healing to full health and changing max and current health and stuff like that. And it's nice to have like an initializer function, even though it's not an initializer function. Just so like when you spawn an enemy, you can, or just even on its on ready, you can have it set up its health without you having to do extra work. So here I have a big list of the different enemy sprites. And I was going to have these for reference in the enemy class, but I think I'm going to kind of stray away from that. So in total, there's, I think, about 10 enemies, maybe 11 if I count. I think I was going to have mimics in there, but I haven't set that up yet. Okay, so I got all this data, and one of the nice things is, even if I don't use it, I can always like copy and paste these values if I make individual scenes for each of the enemies. Could probably even make like subsets, like human enemies could all draw from the different sprites, and then like there's two kinds of spiders and there's two kinds of rats. There's like mouse and rat. Oh, there's the mimic stuff. Good. Good. Okay, so I have the attack. And the hitboxes aren't working yet. Oh, because I don't have them keyframed yet. I also need a lobster walk. And for that, I think I'm just going to be into moving it, kind of jittering it around a bit. And that'll look good enough, you know. I'm not going to animate each of its legs and GIMP or... I don't know, what do you guys use to animate pixel stuff? I haven't, like, kind of delved into that yet, so it's kind of scary. And we need it to die, so it need, kind of, I think the classic is you make it flash red and then disappear. And then at the end, this is where I was saying you can call functions. So we're going to call QFree at the end of the animation. All right, so one of the easy ways to do AI is a state machine. So each state needs an entering function for when it enters the state, a while function for you call every frame for that specific state, and an exit function for when it exits the state. And we'll also need functions that handle changing the state and calling the correct functions, kind of like as a managing things. So we're gonna put like 16 functions just for this really simple state machine. And I think that's about the most number of states I would want in a state machine. Maybe I would want like a stunned. Alright, next up I want to make the specific lobster scene, and it's going to inherit from enemy. So we're going to use that extends enemy line, and then we'll give the class name lobster. I probably don't even need to give it a class name, because I don't think I'll be calling anything specifically. It should all be calling the generic enemy functions. Okay, so I've added in the take damage function, and there's the little state manager, the change state function. So then lobster needs to call the enemy ready function and the enemy physics process. And then I can tack on extra things onto that, and I'll still have all the functionality of the enemy class. Alright, so now I'm running into an issue where I can't make the enemy face left or right, which is kind of fun. Oh yeah, we need to look at triggers when bodies enter the hitbox for the animation, the attack animation hitbox. And I have that hitbox as a child of the CPU particles, and that's because that hitbox is always going to be, I want that to be tied to the visual effect. So like if a wizard shoots a spell, then that hitbox is going to follow. Oh, that doesn't even make sense. Anyways, it made sense when I did it, but now that I say it out loud, the wizard's going to need like a projectile or something. It does something that needs to like spawn. That's what crabs look like when lobsters look like when they walk. So we need to give it the walking animation. And I think I'm going to end up redoing the attack animation too. Alright, so I was going to do like a forward walk and a side-to-side walk. I'm not sure if I end up using both of those. Okay, so here's the new attack animation. And that's kind of what I teased in the last video. Alright, there's all the 20 states. And we need to have a function that tells the enemy to attack the player, or whatever that means. It's typically just going to be playing the attack animation. So I think the way I'm going to have it set up is if the enemy's in range of the player while it's moving, then it's going to do an attack or something. So I probably do need like a stun state. Oh good, my battery's running out. Fantastic. One of the key things about the change state is that if you're in the same state, you want to return out of it so that it isn't like needlessly calling the enter and exit states over and over again. Another good thing would be to have like a print function to make sure that if that is happening that you're kind of noticing, because you shouldn't be calling it to enter the same state that it's in. Another neat thing you can do is for like the enter state, you can make sure you're not in certain states. So if it's dead, I don't want it to be able to enter the attacking state. So when I have enter the attacking state, I can just not do anything if it's in the die state. And also each of the enter states needs to change. So I'm just tracking the state with an integer, and I only want to change that integer with these enter state functions. So like each state is tied to an integer. So 0 is idle, and 1 is moving, 2 is attacking, 3 is dead. And so if you're familiar with C++, you like think of it as a switch state, but in GD script, it's called match. So you do like match and then variant, and then you can have each of your cases. So in my case, it would be like match state, and then I'd have 1 colon, and then I'd do whatever for if it's equal to 1, etc. Alright, so here I'm having an issue getting it to face to the right. And I think what I end up doing is I just have like a little animation that plays at the beginning to just face it right. Yeah. Alright, so here we have the roaming. So if the enemy's idle, I kind of want it to just wander around the room so that it's not just in a static state when the player's not interacting with it. So the enemies need to be told a like roaming location, then they need to move to it, and then if they're at it for a certain amount of time, then they need to pick a new roaming location. That's kind of what that looks like. And then if I throw a bunch of these on there, we can kind of see some errors that are happening. So one problem is if the enemies get stuck, they won't pick a new roaming location. So I probably need a timer that if it's been long enough and they haven't reached the roaming location, then it's time to move on and get a new roaming location. Another issue is I don't have any path making, so the enemies will just get caught on a wall or each other forever. Alright, now I want the enemies to be able to turn to the left, unlike Ben Stiller. And to do that, I tried a bunch of things, and it was very confusing why it wasn't working. So typically with a sprite, you can do flip left right, but if I flip left right, right? My hitbox for my attacks is still on the right side. So I want that to go to the left side too. So I was trying to do, use scale, and that eventually worked, but it took some finagling to get it to work. One of my issues was that a lot of my animations were affecting scale. So if anything was like scale equals 1, it would mess up my scale equals -1. Well, you only want to change the x scale, so like scale.x equals -1. So taking some of that stuff out helped. But I mean, I'll run into another issue where, say I want to make like a big monster, so then the scale is going to equal 2 or something. So then when it equals -1 in the x direction, it's going to look like very tall and thin. So, you know, deal with that problem when I get to it. Alright, here we got a bunch of these little enemies, and look at that. The ones going to the left are facing left, and the ones going to the right are facing right. Perfect. A little zoomed in, easier to see. I threw them in this attack animation because it was hard to see if they were animating with the walk cycle, because the walk cycle is just like a couple pixels tall. Alright, now I've thrown them in a dungeon. Look at the random dungeon. Look how random it is. And so to kind of explain the dungeon, there's stairs at the entrance and exit, and there's 2 empty rooms that were going to be like a shop or a chest or something, I don't know. The rest of the rooms are just have 4 enemies in it. Okay, so now when I enter a room, the enemies change their state. They change to the moving state. They're just not moving, but they aren't like roaming around. So we want to make them chase the enemy. I'm sorry, well, their enemy would be the player. So I want them to chase the player when the player enters the room. And when the player exits the room, I want them to forget anything ever happened and go back about their business. Alright, so here we go. And I enter the room, and they're all chasing me, and I leave, and they ignore me. And they follow me around the room, and, you know, I'll test one of the other rooms just to be sure. Alright, so now I have an issue where my walk cycle doesn't appear to be playing. And I think the issue ended up being I had like a return statement in some kind of if, and so it wasn't getting to the logic that was telling it to play the right animation. It was a very funny error, though. I know today's video isn't like a tutorial. If you guys really like the tutorials, I can make more of them, but I don't have a good workflow for them, and it just takes me so long to edit them. Like the last one, I think it took me like 2 weeks to get out. I had it done for a while, and I just couldn't get anything going on with it. So if you like more tutorials, you know, please ask. I will do them, but otherwise, it's going to be more rambly videos like this, where I just do stuff and then I talk about it. Peak entertainment. Alright, what's even going on here? Oh, you know, I need to attack the player. Did I miss that cue? Probably. And in order to attack the player, I need to know that there is a player. So I have a check to see if the current player reference is active, as in like it exists. And if it does, then, you know, we'll check if they're in range. And if not, then we'll go back to idle. One of the things that I'm not explaining in this video is, so I have a class that's like the Dungeon Master. It basically manages why the enemies are trying to attack the player. So when a player enters a room, the Dungeon Master scene will tell all the enemies in that room that the player is in the room. And then their state will manage, you know, what they do. Okay, here we go. They're attacking me, and they're stuck. Well, so what's happening is the attack state is never exiting at the end of the attack. So what I need to do is after the attack's over, I needed to tell it to go back to the moving state. And I think it's fine if it's in the moving state for a frame, because then if it's still in range of the player, it'll go right back to attacking them. All right, there we go. And they're attacking and they move on with their life. Great. What I have not set up is the player or the enemies taking damage. So I think that's gonna be next week, or maybe next week I'll do... Oh, here, we're gonna do a dying animation real quick. I think, so what happened was I was making animations on the enemy class, and now that Lobster is like a child, I needed like something specific for it. But maybe like this animation would be applicable to any of the enemies, so maybe I can just make a general one. I'm not sure. Oh, I need to turn the collisions off. So that's all for today. I'll have something more substantial next week, maybe. I did a bunch of work on some proc-gen algorithms, but I wasn't really pleased. My implementations were really sloppy, and I didn't really have anything to show with them. I had some like visualizations and stuff. Maybe I can make a tutorial on how to edit images to like graph what your nonsense is doing. I don't know. Anyways, next week probably be something short again, and I hope you all have a good one.